Welcome to Step Into the Story. Incredible conversations of how the Bible changes lives, changes families, and changes communities across the globe. And here's your host, Phil Tuttle of Walk Through the Bible.
Welcome to Step Into the Story. Each time we get together, we have a conversation with a man or woman, and we explore the intersection of their story and God's story. And I cannot tell you how much I've been looking forward to today's conversation, because there really is just a fascinating story on a human level, but then to see that story not just intersected and glance off by God's story, but really find its true meaning and significance in God's story. And I'm thrilled with today's guest, Coach Mark Richt. Mark, thank you for being our guest here today on Step Into the Story.
Thank you, Phil. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, for those of you who are football fans, Mark Richt needs no introduction. But the exciting thing is today's conversation. Sure, we'll talk some football, but it's about a whole lot more than football. And Mark, your career could be summarized pretty quickly. This is the out-facing public part of it. Long-term assistant coach in a variety of roles at Florida State. Broken up in the middle by a quick time as offensive coordinator at East Carolina, and then 15 years as head coach of our own University of Georgia Bulldogs right here in the great state of Georgia, followed by 3 years back at your alma mater, the University of Miami Hurricanes, as head coach there also. Mark, in preparation for this conversation, I read your new book that's entitled Make the Call. And I just need to say to you that you and Lawrence Kimbrough, who helped you put it together, it was not what I expected. I thought I knew your story pretty well. I knew that you're a committed Christ follower as well as a great coach and all that. But I expected to learn a little bit more about you. I learned a ton more about you. I guess that's not too surprising. But the surprise to me was how much your book taught me about myself and just leadership in general. So I just want to say, first of all, thank you for that. Your new book, Make the Call. How did you get the idea for that particular project?
Right. Well, I was approached about writing a book back when I was head coach at Georgia, and I thought it was a good idea for some crazy reason. There's really not time to write a book when you're the head coach at a major university, and so I felt like, I got about a month in the summer I could really dive into this thing. If we can knock it out, let's do it. Well, we got to the beginning of two-a-days had already started, and we were barely on chapter 1.
Oh,
and
no
I
way.
said, there's no way we're gonna. As a matter of fact, I read the chapter 1 rough draft. I said, this is boring. This is no good. I don't like it. And we shut it down. Then, after I retired from coaching, my literary agent got up with me and said, hey, let's do that book. What do you think? I go, well, I don't know. I'll think about it. And then I'm thinking, if I'm going to write a book, I might better do it quick, because you never know what tomorrow will bring. So, and the funny thing about the title, I was working with my wife and my brother-in-law and his wife about a title, and we came up with Make the Call. And it's kind of a play on words where, coach, if you're calling plays in the game, you're making a call every 40 seconds.
Yeah.
As a head coach, you're making calls in recruiting and discipline and, just so many things that surround your program. But you make calls in life, and really making calls is really just making decisions. And so, the goal of this book is to let people get behind the scenes on a lot of decisions I made in football and family and faith. But also, the reader will be challenged to make the biggest call of all in their lives before the book is over.
Yeah. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves a little bit. Let's go back to your growing up years. I know that you were raised in Omaha, Nebraska, which is a special place for me, has been in recent years. Our son Philip was a Chick-fil-A operator there for a couple years, transferred to a new Chick-fil-A in the west suburbs of Illinois, where his wife and in-laws are from. Still too far from Atlanta, but
Right.
Easier to get to than Omaha. But what a wonderful community there in Omaha. Sketch out for us kind of the early years of your life, a little bit about your family, if you would.
Sure. Mom and Dad actually met. They were actually living in the same neighborhood as children and went to the same high school and got married. They're from Omaha as well. And so there's 4 kids born in Omaha. And then my dad eventually got transferred to IBM, got a job at IBM in 1973 in Boca Raton, Florida. And so he had to choose between Boca Raton, Florida, and Poughkeepsie, New York. So that was pretty easy to make that call. But so he was a computer programmer, and so we were in Broomfield, Colorado, which is right in between Denver and Boulder. And then the 5th child was born. So I had my older brother Lou, myself, my brother Craig, and then Mickey, Michelle. You know, about every 2 years, a kid popped out. Good Catholic family, and then eventually, I think it was about 4 years later, Nikki or Nicole was born in Colorado. So there's 5 kids. I was number 2 of 3 boys, and then my 2 sisters on the tail end.
Wow! So is that where you learned to compete originally?
Yeah, compete for food, compete for a lot of things. It was. Sports really was it for me. It was, I think everybody wants to feel good about themselves, and if they're good at something and people acknowledge that, it makes you feel good. It makes you want to do it more. And that was sports for me. It really didn't matter what kind of ball. I can remember, my dad coming home from work, and I'd have his glove and my glove and a baseball, and I'd just beg him to play catch before he even got in the house. And that's kind of how I connected with my dad. Through sports, and so I think that was probably an added layer to why I loved it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Hey, what's your feeling? I know you played multiple sports growing up. What's your feeling about just how early kids are pushed to pick one sport versus what's your view of that?
Right. I think postpone it as long as possible. Personally, I know a lot of families feel like, we got to try to, pave the way for a scholarship one day in athletics. And what's their best sport? What's their best chance? And sometimes I think it begins to take the fun out of the sport. And we played sports back in our day. I lived across the street from Cole Elementary School, and all we had was a playground across the street and a big open field. And then in the back of the school, we had basketball goals and 4 square things, on the ground. So we just played. We just played sport every day. And I think what's happening now, I think parents are afraid to just say, go outside and play and come back when the street lights come on. So to a certain degree, parents feel like they need organized sports for their kids to play. And sadly, some of it is just the fear of letting your kids run around the neighborhood by themselves.
Yeah.
So I understand that part, but if you just say, hey, this is your sport, and it's hard for an 8-year-old to figure out what they want to do.
Yeah,
you might look at a skill set and say, hey, golf is it. But I would put it off as long as possible. It's just so important to experience all the sports and to experience being on a team. I think there's something about learning how to cooperate with people and work towards the same goal that everybody wants. It's very important. And then you learn to deal with some disappointments too, and you get to overcome adversity through sport rather than things in life that are coming down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you. So out of high school, recruited by a number of schools, ended up choosing University of Miami, playing for Howard Schellenberger. Coach, this I did not know about you till I read your book. You have always had an amazing ability to attract talent. What I didn't realize was that actually started during your playing career. You ended up being backup to some unbelievably talented quarterbacks. Talk to me a little bit about the frustration of that, both in college and then trying to launch your own pro career in the NFL.
Right. Through high school, actually my high school coach, Roger Coffey, who I love dearly, he's since passed away, but he did ask me to play one sport, but that was in the 10th grade. He said, if you want to be my quarterback, I need you to focus on just one sport. But if you do that, you'll get a scholarship. So he promised me that. I bought into it and did it. And he really taught me how to play the position of quarterback. I ended up being first team All-State and all kind of great things. And, you said got recruited. So I decided to go to Miami because Coach Saban, who was there actually when I was being recruited, and it wasn't Nick Saban, it was Lou Saban. He had convinced me that I was going to be the guy that kind of saved the program. So I'll never forget being in his office and looking in the Miami Herald at the commitments. And I was looking at this one commitment, and I said, tell me about this guy named Mark Richt. It says quarterback / defensive back next to his name. Tell me what's up with him. I thought I was the guy. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about that. He's a defensive back." And as it turned out, he was a quarterback. But anyway, I go, "Well, what about this other name, Jim Kelly from East Brady, Pennsylvania?" It says quarterback with no slash by his name.
Yeah, nobody's ever heard of him. I mean,
yeah, I'm like, what's up with this? And he says, "Hey, Mark, someone's got to back you up." And I said, "Good thinking, Coach." That's how naive I was back in the day. But so I had my plan to be start as a freshman, be an All-American my sophomore year, win the Heisman my third year, and go pro. I mean, that was my plan. But the only problem was Jim Kelly started to live my life for me, and it got I just never would have dreamed to do some of the things I did in my college days. But once, if your identity is in sport, if your total identity is in being a quarterback like it was for me, when that went down the drain or was going down the drain, my life went down the drain. And that's why it's just so important not to become what we do. And a lot of times we identify with what we do more than who we are in Christ, and that's problematic.
Yeah, that pattern of getting to back up really awesome quarterbacks continued as you were looking to get established in the NFL as well.
Right. I get a free agent shot with the Denver Broncos. I signed my contract in Denver. I'm supposed to meet Dan Reeves, the head coach, the next day. And I go after dinner, after signing my contract, I go in the hotel room and there's a news flash. John Elway just got traded from the Colts to the Denver Broncos. And I was trying to get out of my contract and all that stuff. And so anyway, I got a chance to compete with John Elway for a week. I was the first guy cut that camp. Then the next year, after a few odd jobs, valeting cars as one of them, I was in such good shape chasing cars. I said, I got to try out again. And so I got a shot with the Miami Dolphins, and I lasted a month. I went into the locker when I first got there, and they had locker number 9, which was my college number. It had my name on it.
Sweet.
Now, it was on a piece of tape and magic marker, but it still was. It was there. I'm thinking respect, and then I kept looking down the line. They had the lockers in numerical order. I look at 10, 11, 12, 13. I see Dan Marino.
Oh, man.
And my days were numbered there, too.
So even before you were, assigned the job of recruiting, you were pretty fantastic at that, even though it wasn't great for your own career. So there was disappointment in that, but how early was the idea that maybe I'll be a coach? How did that come about? Yeah,
well, it's kind of a sad story. I got a job after getting cut with Denver as a bartender, and so I'm tending bar and trying to make these fancy drinks that I'd never heard of. and not doing a very good job of it, plus trying to watch football games on the TV monitors while I was at work. So my manager didn't like that much and said, hey, look, you sit on the other side of the bar and have yourself a beer or whatever you want to do. Watch these games, and then when we close up, I got another job for you. So he wanted me to clean the bar after hours. So the last job I had before I coached, you know, I'm kind of shining the brass rails of the bar, and I'm thinking surely I could do something else. And then I was like, well, maybe I could coach. So that's when I grabbed this blue book of college athletics, they called it, and looked up about 5 to 10 schools that I thought I might like to coach at. I mean, I'm so naive. It was just crazy. I did get a couple of letters of recommendation, and it turned out I got a chance to be a graduate assistant. I first got accepted a job at LSU as a graduate assistant coach to help coach the quarterbacks. And the night before I got in my U-Haul that was already packed, set to go to Baton Rouge, I got a call from none other than Coach Bobby Bowden at Florida State. And he offered me a job as a graduate assistant coach, not only to help, I was going to help coach the quarterbacks, but I was going to help him coach the quarterbacks, not a position coach.
Yeah.
And so it was an offer I couldn't refuse. And thankfully, he liked what he saw early on, and he quit coming. He came to one quarterback meeting with me. He watched, kind of observed me at the first practice, and he never came back.
Wow.
So I'm a graduate assistant coach, 25 years old, coaching quarterbacks at, you know, a Power 5 university. I don't know if we called them Power 5s back then, but it was an amazing opportunity to coach games. Yep.
So that started a long-term relationship, not only with FSU, but specifically with Coach Bowden. And I know you did a couple of different stints there, 14 years altogether, grad assistant, and then eventually officially QB coach, and then offensive coordinator. I knew Bobby Bowden was in many ways for you a mentor. I guess we didn't call them mentors back then, but had a huge impact on your life. What are a couple of the biggest life lessons you feel like you learned from Coach Bowden?
Well, you know, everyone will say that Coach Bowden was about football and, you know, faith and family. And then really in order, it's faith, family, and football. And a lot of guys say that that's what they're about, but Coach Bowden truly was about that. He loved God, number one, above all, and wanted to serve him the best that he could. And, you know, number two, he loved his family. And, you know, then football came. So he truly had his priorities in order. And I loved him for that. But the biggest influence, or I guess the biggest thing that happened in my life under his guidance was after the death of a player, unfortunately, is my second year as a graduate assistant. We had an open date early in the year, and Coach Bowden allowed the players to go home if they wanted to. Some chose to go, and some stayed in town. And the ones that stayed in town went to an on-campus party. Somebody pulls the fire alarm. Everybody's on the parking lot. There's a local kid coming through with his car, almost hits one of our players, Pablo Lopez, a big offensive tackle, 6'5", 285, you know, kid of Cuban descent, kind of a jokester. Pablo he was kind of a hard dude too. He was a tough kid. And so he didn't like what happened and got in the driver's side window and kind of cursed this kid out and basically hurt his pride in front of his buddies who were in the car with him. So he knew he couldn't jump out of the car and physically whip Pablo. So he went home, got a sawed-off shotgun, brought it back to the party. Long story short, there's a confrontation. Pablo's out there walking towards him. He pulls the gun out. Pablo keeps walking, calls his bluff, says, you're not going to shoot me, bro. And the kid panicked, pulled the trigger, and Pablo died. So the next day was a scheduled meeting on a Sunday anyway to get everybody back in town from the open date. But it became much more than that. Coach Bowden addressed the team, and he just said, man, I don't know where Pablo is right now. I don't know where he'll spend eternity. I don't know where he was in his faith, and he said, "There's a God. God created you. He loves you. He wants a relationship with you, and he wants you to live, eventually in eternity with him in heaven." And he said, "Man, but the problem is the standard for heaven is perfection, and none of us are perfect. When Adam sinned, sin entered all man, and we think the 10 Commandments are 10 rules to live by, and if you obey them, you get to go heaven. You get to go to heaven. But the 10 Commandments are there to show us we're incapable of perfection. We're incapable of obeying them, and we need a Savior, and that's why He gave us Jesus." And he kind of just was preaching the gospel to the boys. And then there was an empty seat because everybody had assigned seats, and he pointed to the seat that Pablo used to sit in. And he said, "Man, you guys are 18 to 22 years old. You think you're going to live forever." It's like Pablo thought he was going to live forever. And now he's gone. He said, "If that was you last night, instead of Pablo, you know where you'd spend eternity." And he's talking to the players. Well, I'm in the back of the room. I had taken a role, and I was kind of supposed to watch out for anybody in the media hanging around and all that kind of thing. Well, he's speaking to the boys, but the Holy Spirit speaking to me. And some seeds that were planted back in college by a teammate of mine, a guy named John Peasley, a guy that was looking for a fight, looking to get drunk, until one summer we ended up spending time together, and I'm thinking we're going to have this a wild summer, because I started doing all the crazy things when Jim started living my life. I started doing stupid stuff, and so I thought we were going to have one wild summer, and he came back from a short vacation with this piece about him. I was like, "What in the world happened to you, man?" He said, I became a Christian. And so he began to explain to me what was going on with him, and I got attracted to that. I was like, "Man, I need that." But then I was worried about my roommates, my other roommates, my girlfriend. I was worried about being a hypocrite, thinking, "Man, if I become a Christian, I got to be perfect. I could never sin again." And I took inventory of my sin, and I'm like, I think I could stop this sin, and I'm not sure about this one, and I know I'm not stopping this sin anytime soon. And I also thought, gosh, if I become a Christian, God might send me on a mission trip, and I'll never come back.
Yeah.
And I
Kiss
still
all
wanted
my
to
dreams
do what
goodbye. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to do what I wanted to do. So I postponed that decision, and by the grace of God, lived long enough for Coach to preach the gospel to the team and for me to hear it. Well, anyway, the next day after he talked to the team, I knocked on his door, and he said, "Come on in, buddy." And he calls you buddy when you forget your name sometimes. But so anyway, I go in the office. I said, "Coach, I know you were talking to the players, but I need Jesus." And so I prayed to receive Christ right there in the office, and things changed dramatically for me. I became the new creation in Christ. That sin nature I had at birth when Adam sinned, and we have that sin nature, the Adamic nature they call it, that was eradicated, crucified with Christ. And I became this new creation, and this peace that my buddy John had, I all of a sudden had. And all of a sudden, I went from this self-centered guy to a guy that wanted to please God. I had a new goal, one goal: try to live a life that would be pleasing to God. And a very simple goal, not necessarily an easy goal, but my life, it's how I tried to operate ever since.
Well, your life, like many of our lives, splits before Christ and after Christ, and so much more to talk about. We're going to take a quick break right now. Coach, what you're describing is exactly why our ministry, Walk Through the Bible, exists, to draw people into that personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And here's a resource that we've developed at Walk Through the Bible that I think a lot of people will find helps move them down the field in terms of their relationship with Christ. Listen to this, and we'll be back just in a minute or so, and we'll continue our conversation with Coach Mark Richt.
Want to read through the Bible in 1 year with us? The Daily Walk Bible is designed to guide you through your daily reading of Scripture, taking you from Genesis to Revelation in the span of 1 year. Each day's reading includes several chapters of Scripture, an overview to give you a bird's eye view of the day's reading, an insight offering an interesting fact from the day's reading, and My Daily Walk, a short devotion to help you reflect on and apply a specific insight from the day's reading. Every seventh day offers a pause on the journey as you are invited to look back over the readings from the previous week, look up to God, and look ahead to the reading to come. This is the Bible reading plan that will get you through Leviticus. To find out more about the Daily Walk Bible and our other Daily Walk resources, go to walkthrough.org/dailywalk. That's walkthrough.org/dailywalk. Read through the Bible with us in 2022.
Well, welcome back to Step Into the Story and this just fascinating conversation with Coach Mark Richt. And just heard the story, Coach, of how you came to know Jesus as your Savior. It's not like God hadn't been after you for a while with your friend John Peasley and even back to high school with Coach Coffey. I thought it was fascinating in your book when you dodged his question about, do you believe in God? And you're like, well, I believe in football. And
I thought he was going to be proud of me, but I think he felt like he created a monster with the love of football over God. But that's where I was back then.
Yeah, at least it was honest response. You know, so there you are at FSU, and it's also during that time that you meet a young woman named Catherine.
Right.
Tell us about your first meeting, your first conversation with her. Was it love at first sight? Was it mutual? How did that develop?
Well, first of all, if you read Wikipedia, it says she was a cheerleader at Florida State, but she was not a cheerleader. But she was roommates of my roommate. I had a roommate named Jay Perkins, another fellow graduate assistant, and he was dating Liz Ward, and that was her main name. Sometimes Jay would be with Liz, and I'd be with both of them hanging out. And one day I said, man, I need to meet a nice girl. So Liz took it from there and said, oh, I got to know this one girl. She's so elegant and this, that, and the other. And it was a roommate then, Kathy. We call my wife Catherine now, but back then we called her Kathy. And so she wanted us to meet. So we decided to go on a blind date. And we're going to have a movie and a dinner and a movie. So the girls are going to be in charge of dinner, and we were going to be in charge of the movie. And, of course, we picked Animal House.
Great choice.
Oh, my gosh. I can't even believe that. But we picked that, and I actually met her on accident. We were trying to get some money out of a money machine at a public grocery store, and they were shopping for dinner, and we ran into each other when she wasn't ready and I wasn't ready. So it was kind of an awkward hello. But, what happened to us is we became best friends because everybody hung out together. We were all, my roommate, her roommate, were dating and we were around each other a lot. And so I told her every gory story about my life. And if I thought, I was going to marry her one day, I probably wouldn't have told her all that stuff. But in the beginning, we were just friends. So I was an open book, and she was too. And it didn't scare her away, or it didn't scare me away. And so we started to get a little more intimate, and but it was not an exclusive relationship. So at least we hadn't made any rules that I knew of. So one time she was at the house, and another girl called me, and I kind of had a short conversation. That was back, it wasn't cell phone days,
Right.
Back when the phone was on the wall. And so anyway, she's like, who's that? And I said who it was. And she said, take me home. Ooh. And so I was like, okay, I guess I better take her home. So we're driving to her house. And she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking you home. She goes, I don't want to go home. And I said, oh, gosh. You asked me to take you home. So I'm totally confused. And basically, she just laid it out in the law, said, if you want to be with me, it's going to be just me and no one else. Mm. And so I got a little teary-eyed there and said, it was kind of a moment of truth as far as making the call. and I made the right call and decided to date exclusively. And not too long after that, I told her, I said, if I ever tell you I love you, I'm telling you I want to marry you. Because I learned over the dating years, you tell a girl you love her, it changes everything. And don't do it unless you're serious. And so one time I told her, eventually I told her I loved her, and she knew what that meant. And we got married, I guess, 87. But I better know that, right?
Yeah,
that's kind of how it got started.
A good date to have in your head.
Yeah, and I'll say this. I would highly recommend becoming best friends before you become intimate, because it comes in handy when you're an empty nester. Like right now, we're having the best time of our married life as empty nesters and grandparents. We're still madly in love with each other, and we like each other too.
That's fantastic. Yeah, Ellen and I, this will be 41 years this December for us.
Good.
It's the first relationship that ever snuck up on me because it was a friendship. And actually, a mutual friend had to sit me down and go, "You idiot, do you not see? You are in love with Ellen Balmer." And I'm like, "No, we're best friends." It's like the same thing for us now, empty nesters. And we just got back late last night from vacation in Alaska, and there's just nothing better than hanging out with your best friend. That's for sure. I love the way, the prominent role that Catherine has in your autobiography. You really honor her. You show great respect for her, especially in kind of the ongoing battle of your life of fear versus faith. Several times when she just spoke the right words in the right moment. Let me just read a paragraph, because I think a lot of us guys need to be reminded of this. You said, "God gave us our wives for a reason, and one of those reasons involves opening our tunnel-visioned minds to see things from a different perspective. We are so conditioned to be proud, so sure that we're right, so naturally resistant to critique, and so stubborn in the direction of our choices, we often tend to resent or at best minimize the kinds of perspectives our wife gives. We don't see how they, not being in the middle of our world on an all-day, everyday basis, could possibly contribute an insight that we hadn't already seen ourselves." I just got to tell you, the Holy Spirit used those words. That's the area I got to grow in with my wife, to be perfectly honest. I remember the night before our wedding, my dad said, "Hey, Ellen will consistently come to the right conclusion using all the wrong processes. And if you pick apart her logic, you will forfeit one of the greatest sources of wisdom God's trying to give you in your life."
That's pretty awesome.
Isn't that awesome? And
that's pretty awesome.
Man, I just there's some progress needed in our relationship with that one. So thank you for that, my friend.
Well, she saved my. I tease that, when I was at Florida State, we're transitioning to the Charlie Ward era, and under center and under traditional offense, he struggled. I mean, he's throwing the interceptions left and right, and but we'd get into our 2-minute drill in the shotgun and going quick in between plays in a 2-minute drill. He was magical, and so when that happened a couple games where we'd get behind, and because he was struggling, then we'd get in a 2-minute drill and we'd come back and win. My wife's like, "Why don't you just start the game in that thing?" And I was like, "That's not a bad idea." And so we ended up playing a game against Maryland where we started in like a 2-minute drill from the first snap, and we had like 850 yards of offense and scored every time we touched the ball. But I teased that it was her idea, but really she made that observation, and I'm like, that's probably not a bad idea. It changed everything for Florida State and for me.
So eventually, you get here to Georgia, make a long-term commitment. I love the part in the story. Was it Pitt that you were looking at, or someplace else? And
yes.
But you really said, wherever I go, I want that to be someplace where we can raise a family, where we can make a long-term commitment. And the opportunity at Georgia came up, and you took it. And
Right.
if as a fan, just watching you from the outside, if I had to characterize what I saw as a fan, would be just an incredible degree of calm, unflappable, not panicking. I know that got misinterpreted a lot of times by your critics
Sure.
as oh, I don't think maybe he doesn't care enough. Maybe he doesn't really know how to motivate people. But that calm was part of it. Just the integrity of wanting to do things right and not cutting any corners. But maybe more than anything else, your program was characterized by loyalty. Demanding it from the players, to be sure, but a lot of people see loyalty as a one-way street. But with you, Coach, the street ran both ways, and probably ran from you to the players and your staff first. Where did you get your high view of loyalty? Where did that come from?
Well, my experience at Florida State, being there, actually, I think it was 15 seasons out of 16. I did have the 1 year at East Carolina, but being under Coach Bowden and watching him operate the way he did, and we would have what he called a hideaway, where we would, before the season started, we would hide away in a place away from the office, and we would just sit there and talk philosophy and talk about offense, defense, special teams, but a lot just about how we're going to operate as a program. And actually, his number one item in the hideaway was loyalty. He said sometimes there'll be times that you got to be loyal to me, and there'll be times where I'll have to be loyal to you. And he said, but I will say this: if you cheat, I'm not going to be loyal to that. Mm. And I was like, wow, this is awesome, and I'm in the right spot. And but we loved Coach Bowden because he loved us, and he treated us the way he did, and he made sure we made time for our family. He made sure those players knew he cared about them deeply. And his goal was to capture the heart of the player and build a better man. And he felt like if we build a better man, we're gonna have a better team. Mm. And so I bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And when you become head coach, sometimes a lot of coaches have been at 5, 6, 10 different places and 10 different ways of doing things. And you're like, well, what did I like here? What did I like there? Well, I had the benefit of basically being in one spot, and we went 14 years in the top 4 in a row.
Wow.
So all I knew was the Florida State way, the Bobby Bowden way. And so that's what I took with me to Georgia. And I loved seeing players come back. Like you coach players early in your time at Florida State, so to speak. And then, 8 years later, they come back, they're married, they got kids, they come back to their school and they still see their coach. There's something to that, and I was very attracted to that. So my goal, as you mentioned, was I didn't want to go to Pitt unless we thought that was it. I said, honey, I don't want to go to a place thinking I'm looking for another job one day. I want to go to a place to think this is home for good. Mm-hmm. And by the grace of God, we stayed 15 years at Georgia, and we did raise our family here. My mom, dad, brothers, sisters, everybody moved to Athens. They're still here. And I live in Athens again as well. So it's been wonderful for us.
Mm-hmm. One of the things in your book that probably hit me the most when you were talking about loyalty and that long-term commitment, when a player signs, he's making a 4, often 5-year commitment with redshirting. And, to know that in terms, as far as it depends on you, that you're going to be there. And there was just a line in the book that talked about how many of the players had already had the number one man in their life disappoint them. And, just that really just hit me like a ton of bricks when I read that. And it said in there that's one of the reasons you've never changed your cell phone number. so
Right.
that former players can always find you, and talked about maybe 25, 30, 40, maybe 50 calls that you get on Father's Day.
Yeah.
What a legacy right there of being the father figure for a lot of guys.
Well, what happened that really drove the point home is I had a defensive coordinator who decided to take another job, and he asked permission to speak to the defense before he left, and it seemed like a good idea. And but basically, those conversations are like, "Hey, I love you so much, but and thank you for helping me be where I really want to be, somewhere else besides with you." And so he didn't quite say it that way, but that's what they heard. And I'm looking in the eyes of these kids, and I could tell they were hurt. They felt betrayed. They felt that this guy's leaving them, and so when he was finished, I said, "Coach, I appreciate you, and if you don't mind stepping out of the room, I want to address the group by myself." And I told him, I said, "Hey, man, I'm telling you right now, I'm here for you. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm going to hire a man that's going to love you just like your last coach did, or even better." But just give him that assurance, because I would say I know over half of the guys that I had on my roster lived in single parent homes, and it's mom, mom taking care of them. And I can't tell you how many moms came to me in recruiting and just said, I can teach my son a lot of things, but I can't teach him how to be a man. Can you do that for me? Yeah.
It may be that is the single greatest impact of your whole coaching career, right there. The guys that you invested in. That's amazing.
Well, I got another story. I hate to bore you, but
you're not boring me or anybody.
Talking about that phone number not changing.
Yeah.
It's just how I'm at a speaking engagement within the last month, and I'm sitting at the table with one of my former players, which is common to have a guy at an event that lives in the community. And so he's there with his wife, Trey Battle was his name. And he was a walk-on who became a scholarship player who played in the NFL and the Cowboys, and ended up being with the San Diego Chargers. And a teammate of his from college, Paul Oliver, was also a teammate of his at San Diego. And sadly, Paul Oliver took his own life. And that affected Trey in a big way. And when Trey ended up getting cut and was kind of floundering around, again, going back to that identity being in what you do, then all of a sudden you get cut. I mean, in football, you get cut as a young man eventually. Someone's going to say you're not good enough anymore. Go find something else to do. And he was struggling to the point where he was on a bridge getting ready to jump and end his life. And he said something in his spirit told him to call me. And he did. And we talked him into coming to the house, and I had former teammates, and a team chaplain there, and we just ordered pizza and we talked and about the good old days, and we just literally talked him off the ledge. And but he came back to this event, and in the middle of the event, the MC is saying, "Coach, you made an impact in players' lives. We'd like to bring one up on stage and let him tell the story." Well, he tells the story of what happened. And I'm sitting there like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's telling the story. And then he looked at me and he said, "Coach, you saved my life." But that's wild.
Wow. Well, you've had so much success. You've also had some heartbreaks along the way. I know after 15 years of Georgia, at the end of the 2015 season, you were told that UGA was ready to make a change. And
right.
I heard your speeches. I heard, I read the press releases and all. I again, just so impressed with the class that you handled that with. But But how were you really feeling inside when
Right.
when that gig came to an end?
Truthfully, I was thankful. 15 years anywhere is a long time. It was, you know when you sign up for the job that it can happen. Very few coaches go through their career and never get let go somewhere along the way. So you knew it was a possibility. And but I chose to think about all the 15 years that we had that were so awesome, and I was thankful for that experience, and I was thankful for the people that loved and supported us, and I knew God was going to have something for me next. I didn't know what it was, but I was kind of looking forward to see what that was. My goal was to take a rest. I really needed time off is what I needed, but within about a week, I was head coach at Miami. So that was
you weren't very good at retirement, as it turns out.
No, it didn't last very long. But anyway, I know that the other thing that was nice is I got a chance to say goodbye to the team in a team meeting, and I probably hugged every one of them on the way out the door. And there's some good closure there, which was much needed for me and probably for the boys.
Yeah, a lot of time is not the case, unfortunately. And then 3 years head coach at Miami, retired
right
after the 2018 season there. Took on a role as a football analyst with the ACC network. I will say you are excellent at that as well, and I think you broaden the appeal of football far beyond football because of this parallel that it's about this game, but it's also about life, and that combination of faith and family and football that comes through even in your work as an analyst. So thank you so much for that. As you and I are talking today, it's October 21st. And you got a lot of anniversaries that you want to celebrate. Probably 2 years ago today is not one of those anniversaries. Tell our listeners how your world got rocked 2 years ago today.
Well, I'm retired for a little while, and when I retired from Miami, I was experiencing a fatigue level. I mean, when you coach, you're tired. That's just the way it is. Yeah. And everybody's tired. Everybody works hard. So not just coaches. I know that. But in the coaching profession, I coached 35 years. I don't think I missed one day. But towards the end of my time at Miami, I was experiencing a fatigue that was like nothing else I'd experienced. I described it as an extreme fatigue, to where I was thinking, if I keep going at this pace, something really bad's going to happen. And so I didn't think I was just physically able to continue to be what Miami needed. And so I stepped down for my health's sake and for the university's sake. And so a few months later, my wife and I are going through our little routine. We moved on to the beach. We had dreamed of being on the beach for years. And so we're in the beach in Destin, Florida. We'd walk a half an hour to the gym, and I'd do a little old man, weightlifting routine. And then we'd walk back a half an hour, and that was the kind of way we started our day. And so I'm in there doing the very last set of some shoulder shrugs. And instead of 15, I got to about 12, and I just hit a wall and felt like I had to sit down and try to catch my breath. And so I'm trying to catch my breath, and when that's happening, I start sweating, and then I start getting nauseous. And I'm thinking, dadgummit, honey, those vitamins you made me take in the morning are upsetting my stomach. But it got worse and worse to the point where I was like, I need to go to the boys' room. So I go to the locker room and do whatever I got to do. And And then another gentleman walked in and needed to use the facility. So I got out of the bathroom stall and went on the bench in the locker area and was still trying to catch my breath. And I was still sweating bad. And I'm thinking, man, I'm in trouble. So I called out help. And the guy that was there was already in and out. So it was crickets. It was quiet. And no one was in the locker room but me. And I'm like, I got to get to where the people are or I'm not going to make it. And so I walked these 52 steps through the sauna and the steam room area, and the longest walk of my life, I can promise you. And I got into the gym and called out for help, and ambulance comes, and I go to the hospital. I'm on right before I roll into the operating table. You know, I said, I want to see my wife. You know, and I told her I loved her, and I didn't know this was it or not. I had pretty much known by then I was having a heart attack, and as it turned out, I had two arteries 100% blocked, one being the widowmaker. Well, anyway, I'm in there, and they're working on me, but I'm conscious because my blood pressure went so low they were afraid to put me out, and even the EMTs were waiting with the little shot machine in case I coded. Which is code for dying. So anyway, as it's going on, there's a voice saying, "What are you feeling, Coach?" And my body was beginning to go numb, you know, limb by limb, and eventually my arms, my legs, and eventually my head went numb, and I couldn't breathe. Still, I could hear myself gasping for air, and my eyes were closed, but I could still see the light, you know, through your eyelids when you're in the operating table. You could understand how that feels, but then all of a sudden it was as if everything blacked out. So everything went numb, everything went black, and that's why I'm thinking, this is it. This is the end. And you know what I felt? I felt peace. I knew where I was going. I was excited actually where I was going. I was like, here I come, Jesus. And then a little moment after that, I hear, wake up! And I didn't know if it was Satan or Jesus, but no, I'm just kidding. It was the doctor. But anyway, I wake up and I end up making it. But, you know, to feel that peace when you knew it was the end or could be the end was just such a wonderful feeling for me. I was so thankful for the experience, not that so much that God saved me, you know, from this heart attack, from death, just the peace that I felt, you know, the faith from 1986 was real. And I've never doubted that, but you kind of get to that moment of truth and you're thinking, man, I wonder what I'll feel. But I was truly at peace and so thankful for that. And I'm not saying if someone is close to death and they're afraid of dying, they're not a believer. I'm not saying that for a second.
Of course.
But in my spirit, I'm at peace. But in the distance, I can hear my body still gasping for air. So God designs our bodies to survive and to live. But in my spirit, I was in a whole different place. And I really was so thankful for that.
Mm. So God said, not done with you yet, Coach.
Not done.
Not done.
That's right.
I know.
That's right.
Earlier this year, you, after making a full recovery from that really severe heart attack, and what for so many people is fatal when it's that particular artery, but got the news, the diagnosis of Parkinson's.
Right.
How did you come to know that? I know you had suspicions that you'd watched your dad struggle with that, but how did that diagnosis come?
Well, I had hip surgery, had hip replacement of my right hip. I had my left done like 7, 8, 10 years earlier, and as I'm rehabbing, the rehab just was taking forever. And, you know, my balance and, you know, my muscle rigidity, and I felt like I was sluggish all the time. And so I'm thinking, you know, I need to go to my primary care doctor. And I was suspecting Parkinson's, and he was too. He got me to a neurologist locally and then to a specialist later, 2 months later. And by the time I got to the specialist, 2 months after, I was pretty sure I had it. he told me what I already knew, and that I had Parkinson's. So I had time to kind of process it, the possibility of having it for a few months. Well, I think that was healthy. If I went to my primary care and he immediately said, "You got Parkinson's," that might have been a huge blow, but and a shock to my brain and my spirit. But by the time I was told by the specialist that I had it, I'd already made peace with it, and I ended up tweeting it out because I'd be at a speaking engagement and I'd be moving slow, or my balance wasn't right, or it looked like my back was hurting, and everybody kept asking me the question, "What's wrong?" basically. And I got tired of feeding them a bunch of junk about it. Well, my hip surgery, it's taken a while. And so I said, I'm just going to tell everybody at the same time. So I got on Twitter and basically said that I had it, but I viewed it as a momentary light affliction compared to the glory that's coming. That glorified body I'm going to get that has no sin and has no disease. The body that I'm going to get that's going to match up with the spirit and soul that became right with God when I became a believer, and and that's how I see it. And so when peace was the number one joy of being a Christian in me when I first became a believer, and even through my heart attack, the key word for me now is hope. If my hope was only in temporal things of this earth, what do I have to look forward to? Well, I've got a progressive disease that sometimes people become a prisoner in their own body, and they get to the point where they can't even swallow anymore, and it's over. But that's all I got to look forward to on this earth. That's kind of a sad commentary, but I have the hope in my eternal glory with God because of what He's going to give me when I get there. And so I have a lot of hope because my hope is in eternal things, not temporal things.
Well, I cannot think of a better place to land this conversation than right there. One of the things you're known for, Coach, is telling players when they played for you and during the rest of their life, finish the drill. And now you're getting a chance to model that. And it's not what you or Catherine or anybody else who loves you would have chosen, but it's part of life. And
right.
I thank you for the ministry that you're continuing to have for me and a whole lot of other people who are watching from the bleachers as you teach us how to live and how to finish the drill. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for this conversation. Again, yes, I could not give a higher endorsement to the book Make the Call by Mark Richt. Football fans will love it. Even if you roll your eyes when your spouse or significant other flips to a football game or multiple games on Saturday, you will love this book because it's also about faith, it's about family, and there's plenty of football to keep people like me happy as well. Coach, thank you so much for being with us today. Every time we get together on Step Into the Story, this is exactly the conversation that we hope to have. And this is why our ministry, Walk Through the Bible, exists. If you are struggling with anything, I'd love to hear from you. If God has used this conversation in your life to spark some questions or stimulate some growth, you can email me at phil@walkthrough.org. That's WALKTHRU.org. And we look forward to the next time we get together on Step Into the Story. Coach, thank you so much for just opening up your life today with us.
I enjoyed it, Phil. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for the Step Into the Story podcast, powered by Walk Through the Bible. We'd love to hear what you think by giving us a review on iTunes or Google Play. Also, don't miss a single episode by clicking the subscribe button. If you'd like more resources to help you explore and live God's Word in your daily life, visit walkthrough.org. That's WALKTHRU.org. Walk through the Bible. Take a walk, change the world.